Greetings, salutations, respect, and love. I am Scott, and welcome to Prog Corner Radio, where today we're going to be investigating prog rock's greatest hits. Well, if that's not an oxymoron, I don't know what is. Prog rock was never concerned about commercial success or, having hit singles, or were they? Well, today I'm going to be breaking down prog's greatest hits. Prog hits by prog bands during their prog era. That's the criteria here, boys and girls. So there's not going to be Stairway to Heaven. We're not going to be looking at Bohemian Rhapsody, Radar Love, Argent's Hold Your Head Up, Frankenstein, definitely a prog song. Sugarloaf's Green-Eyed Lady, boy, that's a prog song, and it was a big hit. But in the 70s, there were a lot of things that were kind of proggy, man. You had Lynyrd Skynyrd, Freebird, and Aerosmith's Dream On had Mellotrons in them, man. Harry Chapin, Cat's Cradle had an electric sitar solo. So, a lot of things were very proggy back in the 70s, including bands like ELO. But then in the 80s, you had Saga. They had a big MTV hit. I'm not including that. But really, the elephant in the room here is, what do you do about Phil Collins? Well, it's prog artists by prog bands during their prog era. And I contend that even though Phil Collins is a prog artist, none of his albums are prog albums. None of his solo albums had much prog in them at all, even that first one. So in the air tonight, I'm not including it. Kate Bush was a little tougher. How do I deal with Running Up That Hill? Well, I'm just going to exclude it. How about that? That makes things nice and simple. And then you had a lot of regional hits, certain parts of the world. Italy, Le Ormi had Giacomo di Bimbo was a big hit. PFM had Impressioni di Settembre was a big hit for him. In the Netherlands, Kayak scored a big hit with Ruthless Queen. In Greece, you had Demis Roussos from Aphrodite's Child after he and Vangelis went their separate ways. He put out a bunch of stuff. He had a big hit in Germany called Goodbye, My Love, Goodbye. He had a big hit in Russia called From Souvenirs to Souvenirs, and Forever and Ever was number one in Belgium. But we're talking about more worldwide kind of hits. So at number 25, boys and girls, a song that was released on 45 in 1969. It did not chart. It's 21st Century Schizoid Man by King Crimson. This probably should not be here. This song really was not a hit. But, this song is kind of the song that got everything in motion. And, the primary reason it's on here is back in 2010, Kanye West sampled this song for his hit single Power, which hit number 22 in the U.S. But you can't do a prog list without including King Crimson at number 24. We said we weren't going to be talking about regional hits, but I will make an exception when that region is the US or the UK. And coming in at number 24, it's Backstreet Love by Curved Air. This came off their 1971 second album. The song actually hit number 4 in the UK. It was written by Sonia Christina, Daryl Way, and Ian Iyer. Even though Daryl didn't play on it, Francis Monkman plays keyboards and guitar on here. Just great. R.I.P. Francis. He left us May 14th, and that might be a big reason why I put this Curved Air song on the list in memorial to him at number 23. It's Calling Occupants of Interplanetary Craft from Klaatu. Yeah, the Canadian band that everybody thought was the Beatles. It came off their 3:47 Eastern Standard Time EST album that came out in 1976. It peaked at number 62 in 1977, and then the following year, the Carpenters, of all people, covered it. Got to number 32 in the US and number 9 in the UK. Cool song at number 22. It's Dream Theater and Pull Me Under, another one that did not chart, but it was on the mainstream rock Billboard charts, hit number 10 in 1992. This was their debut single off their second album, so this was the first time a lot of folks had heard the great voice of James LaBrie. Obviously, this album came off of Images and Words, and even though it wasn't a Billboard singles hit, this song hit the radio hard and really opened up a whole new generation to progressive sounds. At number 21, it's Theme 1 by Van der Graaf Generator. Yeah, this is another one that wasn't a big hit anywhere but Italy, apparently, where it did hit number 1. But this is a George Martin penned instrumental track that was used at the beginning and the end of the broadcast day on BBC One and BBC Two. And then Van der Graaf Generator did their own version of it. And the BBC replaced the George Martin version with the Van der Graaf Generator version. The song does appear on the US version of Pawn Hearts. I love it. It's fantastic. At number 20, it's Sympathy by Rare Bird. Oh, man. Again, a regional hit. I think this was only really big in the UK, where it hit number 27 in 1970. I lied. I just looked at my notes, and it did hit number 1 in Italy, hit number 1 in France. I guess overall this thing sold like 1 million copies worldwide. Marillion did a cover version in 1992, and it was a hit in the UK, hit number 17. So it was actually a bigger hit for Marillion than it was for Rare Bird. And this was off their debut album that came out in 1969. Just fantastic. There's Not Enough Love in the World. Absolutely. At number 19, how about Frank Zappa and his daughter Moon Unit and Valley Girl? This thing came out in 1982, and it peaked at number 32 on the Billboard chart. This was Frank Zappa's only hit. It's the only one that ever cracked the top 100. And it's a fun song. Is it prog? Well, probably not. That whole album that this came off of really wasn't a super proggy album. Hey, it was 1982. A lot of people weren't doing super proggy albums. At number 18, how about Uriah Heep and Easy Living? This came out in 1972. The lead-off single for Demons and Wizards. This was actually the only single that ever charted for Uriah Heep in the U.S. It's just amazing, and I guess this song has been huge in other parts of the world, like Eastern Europe, I guess, where Uriah Heep can do no wrong. At number 17, it's Styx, Come Sail Away. Yeah, Styx prog. I don't know. I don't care. You know, put a label on it if you want. Use Dennis DeYoung's label. It's his band, and he called it Prog Light. So who am I to argue with him? This was obviously a Dennis DeYoung song. It came off The Grand Illusion, which was their 7th album that dropped in 1977. And the single peaked at number 8 in 1978. And this was absolutely a critical single for Styx. 3 out of their last 4 singles didn't even chart. And the one that did, Mademoiselle, only made it to number 34. So there's stories that Dennis DeYoung and Tommy Shaw and James Young, they were all going from radio station to radio station, knocking on doors, handing them, the music, saying, hey, you got to play this record. And this was their second top 10 hit. Obviously, Lady was their first. They ended up with 8 number 1 hits, or top 10 hits rather. Only 1 number 1, that was Babe. But 7 out of the 8 top 10 hits were written by Dennis DeYoung. Only 1 was written by Tommy Shaw. So your trivia question, you can put it in the comments, is which Tommy Shaw penned Styx song hit the top 10 in the U.S. At number 16? It's Mike Oldfield and the theme from Exorcist, Tubular Bells Part 1. I guess Dude Man was all salty about what they put on the B-side. They put excerpts from another part of the album on the B-side without his permission. He wasn't too happy about it. This album obviously is the album that made Richard Branson a billionaire. The movie, The Exorcist, utilized this music. What a coup that was, as this single was dropped in 1974. And it hit number 7 in the U.S., number 31 in the U.K. Everybody knows that music. Just tell them it's prog and they'll figure it out. Here's another one a lot of people know, but don't know a whole lot about. It's Eye in the Sky from the Alan Parsons Project. Particularly if you're a sports fan, you grew up watching the Chicago Bulls play, and when they'd announce the starting 5 for the Chicago Bulls, Eye in the Sky would start playing in the Chicago arena. It was just really amazing. This song hit number 3 in the U.S. It's the only song Alan Parsons ever released that hit the top 10 in the U.S. Off their 6th album of the same name at number 14. It's Peter Gabriel's debut single, Salisbury Hill, from 1977. This only hit number 68 in the U.S., and number 13 in the UK. So why is it here and why is it ranked so high? Well, I don't know if you guys have a TV or not, but man, you can't turn the TV on these days without seeing George Clooney and hearing Salisbury Hill in the background for a coffee commercial or some such thing. The song has definitely had legs, has taken on a life of its own, and why not? It's an amazing track. I just absolutely love it. At number 13, it's Supertramp and Give a Little Bit. I could have gone with Dreamer. I could have gone with Logical Song. Goodbye Stranger. They had so many great hits. Dreamer was their first big hit. This was their second big hit, and it hit number 15 in the US in 1977. It was their biggest hit at that point, but certainly their next album would take them to brand new heights. Obviously a Roger Hodgson song. Just love it. Even the Goo Goo Dolls' horrible cover could not hurt my opinion of this song. At number 12, it's Genesis and their first hit single, I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe, from 1973. Actually, the single was dropped February 1974, and it peaked at number 21 in the UK. I don't even think they dropped it in the US. Genesis was pretty much a non-factor. This was a song, obviously Peter Gabriel's lyrics, kind of driving the train for the artwork. The artist, Betty Sedgwick, added a lawnmower to her art piece to try to, play into it. The riff is originally a Steve Hackett riff. So even though others get songwriting credit, I think Tony's got a songwriting credit on here, but it's primarily Peter and Steve. Just a great song. I love it. At number 11, hey, it's Marillion and Kayleigh. You knew this was going to be here, right? I mean, it hit number 2 in the UK, and it stayed there for weeks, I guess 14 weeks on the charts. This was off of Misplaced Childhood, Marillion's third album that came out in 1985. The song actually did chart in the US. I should read my notes a little bit more often. It hit number 74, so it was really not a big deal there. But this is Fish writing about an ex. I guess she died recently. He tweeted that out. But it's a beautiful song and really put Marillion on the map and put the neo-prog movement really in high gear. And now, boys and girls, oh yeah, it's the top 10 prog rock hits. You want prog on the radio? Well, here you go, my friends. At number 10, it's Carry On, Wayward Son from Kansas, their first top 10 single. It hit number 11 in the US back in 1977 off of the great album Left Overtures. Kerry Livgren wrote this song. Yeah, it's been overplayed, but it's one of those songs that actually I can't listen to it enough. I never get tired of it. It's written so well. How many riffs can you cram into one 5-minute song? It's just incredible. I love it. At number 9, it's Asia with Heat of the Moment. Yeah, back in 1982, Asia took on the world. Their debut album was the biggest selling album of 1982. Think about that for a second. What other album came out in 1982? Oh yeah, Michael Jackson Thriller came out, and it sold more copies than Thriller. Well, obviously, in the ensuing years, Thriller's lapped it about 400 times, but at that moment, in the heat of the moment, man, nobody was bigger than Asia. The song hit number 4 in the US, and just one of the great moments in the history of prog was when Steve Howe's guitar chords actually ended up on the radio. Is great. At number 8, it's Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Lucky Man. Greg wrote this song when he was only 12 years old. The song only hit number 48 in the US, but it was one of those songs that classic rock radio played a lot back in the old days. They don't play ELP much anymore. It was re-released back in 1972 where it hit number 51. So both times it was issued in the US, it kind of floundered just under the top 40 mark. But The Simpsons had a little bit of fun with this. Back in season 21, Homer finds an Emerson, Lake and Palmer CD, and he starts rocking out to Lucky Man. Good stuff. At number 7, it's Jethro Tull and Livin in the Past. Oh, this thing was originally released in 1969, where it hit number 3 in the UK. It came out 3 years later in the US, and in 1972, where it hit number 11. I remember hearing this on the radio all the time, and years later, when I figured out it was from 1969, it kind of blew my mind, man. This is a song in 5/4 time. It's really cool. Man, Jethro Tull was so far ahead of their time. How in the world did that song come out in 69 originally? Just amazing. It's fantastic. At number 6, it's time to yodel, boys and girls. It's Hocus Pocus by Focus. This song originally was found on their second album, Moving Waves, dropped in 1971. It was written by Thies Van Leer and Jan Ackerman, of course, and it is just an incredible track. Yeah, it's got the yodeling and stuff. But the single itself was released a couple years later in 1973, where it subsequently hit number 9 in the US and number 20 in the UK, and it's still just one of the classic prog rock songs. If you want to get people into prog rock, why not play him Hocus Pocus, man, at number 5. How about Roundabout by Yes? Yeah, the first thing I ever heard from my favorite band was this single. It didn't make a huge impression on me because I was just a little kid, back in 1972 when the single was dropped. Fragile came out in 71, single came out in 72, and it actually peaked in the US at number 13, where they shortened this song up. The album version's 8 minutes and 29 seconds. The single version is 3 minutes and 27 seconds. John Anderson talks about hearing it for the first time on the radio and being a little upset. But then he realized, hey, this is the way the business works. You can't have an 8.5-minute song and expect it to be a hit. At number 4, boys and girls, how about Rush? Oh, yeah, let's talk about Rush. What are we doing by them? Well, at number 4, I got Tom Sawyer off of the 1981 album Moving Pictures. This was a single, and it actually did have a little bit of traction. I'm playing with my lights here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The single hit number 44 in the US, which I don't remember. I was working in a record store at the time, but I don't remember it actually charting. It hit number 25 in the UK. And another thing that I didn't remember is that Neil Peart didn't write all the lyrics on this. It was written by Max Webster, associate Pi Dubois helped with the lyrics. I did not know that. I guess he helped out with a few Rush songs and a whole bunch of Max Webster songs. Come on, man. Tom Sawyer. Everybody plays air drums to this thing. First time I heard this song was actually on the Permanent Waves tour, where they were trying out Tom Sawyer and Limelight back in 1980, 81. It was awesome, but Tom Sawyer, man, just so great. At number 3 for the greatest prog rock hits. Yeah, it's prog on the radio, man. And we're going in 7/4 time with Money by Pink Floyd. This was their first US hit. Yeah, they'd had a couple hits in, the UK, See Emily Play and all that weird stuff, Arnold Lane. Americans weren't listening to that kind of stuff. And we never did, and we never will. But man, Money hit the U.S. by storm. The single hit number 13 in 1973, which is a big, big deal. The song still gets a lot of airplay, as well it should. It's fantastic. Come on, man. It's Dark Side of the Moon. Number 2, the greatest hits of prog. It's Procol, Harum, A Whiter Shade of Pale. This was their debut single, dropped in 1967. Some people will call this the very first prog song. Maybe yes, maybe no. But it did sell over 10 million copies worldwide, written by Keith Reid and Gary Brooker. I guess years later, Matthew Fisher was able to sue in the UK courts to put his name on the credits. You hear the Bach piece that's being played by Matthew Fisher here. The song is just incredible. It hit number 1 in the UK, obviously. Hit number 5 in the US. And it's just one of those songs that every single person who's walking on this planet knows. But there's one song that's even better known that I consider to be the greatest hit in the history of prog. Yeah, it's also from 1967. It's Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues, written by Justin Hayward. What an amazing track this is. Originally released in 1976, and it only got to like number 19 in the UK. In the US, it did absolutely nothing. It hit like 103. So 3 years later, back in 1972, they reissued it. I guess the Moody Blues had enough traction that they figured they could, reissue this track. And sure enough, it did the trick back in 72. It did hit number 2 on the Billboard charts. It was kept out of the number 1 position by I Can See Clearly Now by Johnny Nash. It was reissued again in 1979 in the UK, where it hit number 19. And then a whole younger crowd of people know the song from Rob Zombie's Halloween remake, where he uses the song to absolute great effect. So creepy, so cool, so amazing. And there you have it. Prog Rock's greatest hits, the 25 greatest hits in the prog genre, boys and girls. Prog was played on the radio. It's still played on the radio in some parts of the world, though not my part of the world, that's for sure. I live in BFE, Ohio, man. We don't get anything like that. But, that's what the internet's for, man. Anyway, I am Scott. You are in the Prog Corner. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I will see you freaks soon. Peace in the Middle East, free Tibet, and God save the king. Peace. See you tomorrow.